Welcome back. The assault in Ukraine, the pandemic, inflation, and the economy. President Biden had a lot to go over last night in his first State of the Union address. Our 9 News political experts, Republican Maher and Democrat James Mejia, join us to break down the speech. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So, James, I think many would agree that President Biden's speech really needed to bring the country together, unite us. Do you think that he did that?
You know, I think he did over the issue of the Russian invasion of Ukraine and an unprovoked attack and invasion, which I believe is uniting not only both parties in the United States, not only the U.S. people, but people around the world with regard to that response. And so I think Biden put that out there first and foremost about what we most need to be concerned about today.
Kelly, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with James. I think that President Biden actually sounded, dare I say, presidential at the beginning of the speech regarding Ukraine. I think that was really important, and it is a unifying thing for the entire country. The rest of the speech, however, was really concerning when it comes to domestic agenda items. How much of that can actually be done is to be seen, obviously, because Joe Manchin came out after the speech and said, yeah, none of this is really going to happen.
So many people are talking about Representative Lauren Boebert heckling the president last night a few times during his speech. I want to get both of your thoughts on this, since it seems to be what so many people are talking about this morning. Kelly, let's start with you.
Look, I get questions about this and this type of thing a lot, as I am a Republican and a woman. I have a lot of respect for Congresswoman Boebert in a lot of things. Last night was not the appropriate time to do that. I think that it was distracting. I think that she actually had a point that could be made well, for instance, here this morning, which is that he did that entire speech and didn't even mention Afghanistan, which was a massive thing that happened in the last year. But however, the way that she went about it actually undermined her entire point. And I really wish she hadn't done that. The other side of that coin, though, is that she ran kind of as that person, right? Like, she ran under the banner of being the AOC of the right. And she won a primary against Scott Tipton. I guarantee you Scott Tipton would not have done that last night. And so there is an argument to make that is what the people of her district were looking for when they elected her. However, I really was deeply disappointed by that. It was really tacky.
Yeah, we know she wasn't the only one last night. Marjorie Taylor Greene also was part of this. James, what are your thoughts?
Well, unfortunately, this is becoming a trend of Republican electeds interrupting a sitting president and heckling a sitting president during State of the Union. This has happened before. It happened with Obama in terms of shouting out and heckling him and calling him a liar. You know, there is an opportunity to disagree without being disagreeable and without bringing shame upon your district and your state. I think Boebert looked small and petty. It's ironic that she chose the issue of military experience and working with veterans, an issue on which she has very little experience. And on the other hand, Biden has lost a veteran son. Biden is from a strong military family. So very ironic that she would choose that issue in particular to talk about something where she is vastly outmatched by the sitting president.
Right. So in our last hour, we talked about how you would rate the first year of this presidency. And Kelly, you said a 3 out of 10. And James, you said a B+. So looking ahead, at this next year, and what do you think that many Americans need to see out of this administration? James, we'll start with you.
Yeah, well, first of all, starting with COVID and the coronavirus fatigue, folks need to see children going back into schools, children going back to the schools without masks, businesses reopening. Some sense of normalcy, I think, is going to reflect on the president, regardless of how much impact he can actually have on that issue. He's going to be blamed or credited with how the feeling in the country is with regard to coronavirus. So that is something that is a cloud over the entire country right now. The other part is selling the domestic agenda with regard to infrastructure improvements. Hopefully, many of those improvements on transportation, roads, bridges are some of the things that we can agree upon. And I thought he made a decent case with regard to the new energy economy and sustainable energy jobs. And I hope he doubles down on that issue, especially given what can happen that we're seeing when countries control oil and it's outside of our country's control.
And Kelly, looking ahead to this year?
Yeah, I just need to put a point on the previous question, which is that this is not something that Boebert was wrong, but this is not something that is just like solely owned by Republicans. I would like to remind everybody that Nancy Pelosi looked at Donald Trump at the end of his State of the Union speech and ripped his speech in half. So like tackiness at the State of the Union is a thing that happens everywhere. I think moving forward, what people need to see is they need to be able to have, as you know, James put a good point on it, they need to have some kind of consistency. They need to be able to look forward. I think that we need to dig in on domestic energy production. A lot of these green energy mandates that are coming in are going to be very expensive, and people who are trying to figure out how to fill their tanks, send the tanks of their cars, send their kids back to school, preferably unmasked, and buy groceries or trying to figure out how to make it all work. And those are things that people are really looking for moving forward.
All right. It's always fun having you both on. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Hey.